My parents gave my sister a brand new BMW with a red bow. But then they turned to me and gave me a piggy bank with $1 inside. My father laughed and said, "It's symbolic, Jenny. Time to save." The whole room burst into laughter. I smiled so they wouldn't see the tears in my eyes. But inside, I was breaking. In that moment, I realized something. I wasn't a daughter to them. I was a joke. And that night, at 3 a.m., I made a choice that would change my life forever. Before I tell you how that decision turned my entire world upside down, you need to know the years of pain that came before it. If you're new here, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss more powerful stories of people who turned family betrayal into strength. Because the truth is, that humiliating Christmas gift wasn't the first time my parents made me feel invisible. It was only the last straw. Growing up under the same roof with my sister Emily felt like living in two different families. From the outside, people thought we were the perfect picture of success. My dad, Thomas, was a respected CFO who wore tailored suits and drove sleek cars. My mom, Margaret, was a cosmetic surgeon who always looked polished, her heels clicking against the marble floors of our Boston home. And then there was our house, an immaculate colonial with manicured lawns, Christmas lights that won neighborhood contests, and a 3-car garage that never sat empty. To anyone looking in, we were the kind of family people envied. But inside those walls, I lived a very different story. Emily, the youngest, was always the princess. When she was 10, she had a walk-in closet that looked like something out of a magazine, filled with clothes from Nordstrom and Saks. When I was her age, I got hand-me-downs or mid-range outfits from the department store clearance racks. My parents always said the same thing. "Jenny, you're tough. You don't need much." That one sentence became the excuse for everything, every unequal gift, every missed opportunity, every time they pushed me aside to favor her. I'll never forget the year Emily turned 16. She walked outside on her birthday to find a shiny new car waiting in the driveway, complete with balloons and a cake shaped like the keys. I watched her cry happy tears while my parents clapped proudly, telling her how much she deserved it. That same year, my birthday gift was a refurbished laptop and a $20 gift card to a bookstore. My dad patted my shoulder and said, "It'll be enough for you, Jenny. You're resourceful." Emily's weekends were filled with shopping sprees and spa days that my mom arranged because she needs to feel special. My weekends were spent babysitting, cleaning houses, or working shifts at the coffee shop downtown so I could save up for the extras my parents wouldn't buy. Whenever I questioned the difference, I got the same response. My mom would sigh, "Emily is delicate, honey. She needs more support." My dad would chime in, "You're independent. You'll figure it out." The words were framed as compliments, but to me they were a dismissal, a way to justify neglect. The truth is, it wasn't just about the gifts. It was about what those gifts represented. Emily's presents were symbols of love, attention, and investment in her future. Mine felt like obligations, boxes checked so they could say they hadn't forgotten me completely. I worked harder, studied longer, and tried to shine in ways they couldn't ignore. But no matter how much I achieved, the spotlight always belonged to Emily. At school, I was known for being the smart one, the overachiever, the girl who always raised her hand with the right answer. At home, I was just the other daughter, The one who got good grades but didn't need praise because she's already fine on her own. When Emily posted a dance recital clip on Instagram, my parents shared it with everyone they knew. When I got onto the dean's list for the third semester in a row, my mom nodded distractedly and went back to helping Emily pick a filter for her selfies. Living like that left scars I didn't even realize I had until much later. I told myself I didn't care, that I was strong enough to stand alone, but deep down I wanted what every daughter wants, to be seen, to be valued, to feel like I mattered just as much as my sister. Instead, each year drove the message deeper. Emily was cherished, and I was expected to survive without it. And as much as it hurt, that was only the beginning. If there was one thing I clung to while growing up in that divided house, it was achievement. I thought if I worked hard enough, if I stacked up enough accomplishments, then maybe my parents would finally see me the way they saw Emily. School became my safe place, the one area where effort actually paid off. While Emily was out shopping or posting pictures from parties, I was at the library poring over textbooks until my eyes ached. By the time I hit high school, my GPA was perfect. I joined every club I could fit into my schedule, volunteered at local charities, and even took on tutoring to help younger kids. Teachers praised me, awards lined my bedroom shelf, and I secretly hoped each certificate would be the one to make my parents proud. But at home, those papers barely earned a passing glance. I remember one night in particular. I had just been accepted into the National Honor Society, a big deal at my school. I rushed home with the letter in my hand, practically glowing with excitement. Emily was sprawled on the couch, scrolling through her phone, while my parents sipped wine in the kitchen. I walked in, holding the envelope like a golden ticket. "I got in," I announced, waiting for their faces to light up. My mom looked up briefly and said, "That's nice, Jenny," before turning to ask Emily about an Instagram post that had apparently gone viral. My dad gave me a distracted smile, muttered "good job," and went back to talking about his work bonus. The entire moment lasted less than 30 seconds. Meanwhile, Emily had been invited to a sorority pre-event, and my parents couldn't stop talking about it. They posted about her bright future on Facebook, showing off her pictures in designer dresses while I sat in the background with my Honor Society letter, invisible. College was no different. I earned a partial scholarship to Boston University, juggling 2 part-time jobs and an internship just to cover the costs my parents refused to help with. Every night I came home exhausted, balancing textbooks on my lap as I worked late shifts at the cafe. When I finally graduated with honors in marketing, I looked into the crowd during the ceremony, scanning for familiar faces. My friends waved at their parents, who were cheering and holding flowers. My seat? Empty. My parents had decided to take Emily on a weekend trip to Aspen instead. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself I didn't need their applause because I'd proven I could succeed on my own. But the truth is, each missed moment carved another wound inside me. Achievements that should have been milestones in my life felt like whispers in a crowded room, drowned out by the noise of Emily's every trivial success. It became a pattern. No matter how high I climbed, I was always invisible next to her. Emily landed a summer internship through my dad's connections, and my parents treated it like she'd built a company from scratch. When I completed a successful marketing campaign at my job, they barely acknowledged it before changing the subject. That kind of neglect does something to you. It twists the way you see yourself. For years, I believed if I just kept pushing, one day they would turn and finally say, "We're proud of you, Jenny." But that day never came. Instead, the message was clear. Emily was worthy of their time, their praise, their investment. I was just expected to figure it out. No congratulations required. And by the time that Christmas rolled around, I was tired. Tired of fighting for scraps of attention. Tired of being the afterthought in my own family. Deep down, I knew the holiday wasn't going to be any different. But I still wasn't prepared for how far they would go to remind me of my place. By the time I reached my 20s, the favoritism in our house wasn't just subtle, it was impossible to ignore. It wasn't about little things anymore, like clothes or attention. It was big, obvious gestures that left no doubt about where my parents' love and money flowed. Take cars, for example. Emily crashed her first car within a year of getting it. She was 16, texting behind the wheel, and totaled the shiny sedan my parents had surprised her with on her birthday. I remember the phone call that night, Emily sobbing hysterically, my mom soothing her like she was the victim instead of the reckless driver she was. The very next week, a replacement car appeared in the driveway. Newer, safer, more expensive. My parents told everyone it was because they just wanted to make sure Emily was protected. Meanwhile, I was still nursing my beat-up 10-year-old Honda Civic, a car I had saved for years to buy myself. The transmission failed, the brakes squealed, and every repair bill felt like a mountain I had to climb alone. I begged my parents for help once, during a snowstorm when the car broke down on the highway. My father's response still rings in my ears. "Jenny, you need to learn responsibility. We can't keep bailing you out. I wasn't asking for a bailout. I was asking for the kind of support they handed Emily without question. And it wasn't just the cars. Emily's college expenses were fully covered. Tuition, sorority fees, spring break trips, all of it charged to my parents' credit card without a second thought. When it came to me, though, they suddenly believed in building character. I worked double shifts, skipped meals, and lived off instant noodles, while Emily posted photos of her and her friends holding cocktails on a beach in Cancun, courtesy of Mom and Dad. The double standard ran through every corner of our lives. Emily's mistakes were brushed off as growing pains, while mine were treated like evidence that I wasn't as perfect as they expected me to be. She skipped classes, and my parents laughed about how she'll find her way. I once got a B in a statistics class, and my father sat me down for a lecture on falling behind. The emotional imbalance was just as brutal. At family gatherings, relatives would swarm Emily, hearing stories about her sorority, her internships, her latest shopping spree. I sat quietly, hoping someone might ask about my job or the campaign I had just led at my marketing firm. They rarely did. If they did, my mother would nod politely before steering the conversation back to Emily's newest adventure. It was like I existed in the same room but on a different planet, invisible unless I was useful. I tried to convince myself it was fine, that maybe this was just the role I was born into, the strong one, the self-sufficient one. But deep down, the injustice burned. I had worked harder, sacrificed more, and yet it never mattered. Emily's life was paved with ease and praise, while mine was built on struggle and silence. Looking back, all those moments were warning signs, each one chipped away at whatever fragile bond I still had with my parents. Each one reminded me that no matter how hard I tried, I would never measure up to Emily in their eyes. So when that Christmas came, it wasn't just insult. It was the culmination of years of favoritism, years of pain, years of being told in 1,000 different ways that I was less. And that was why the humiliation of that night cut so deep. It wasn't just about a car. It was about everything that came before it. By the time Christmas came around that year, I already knew what to expect. I had learned long ago not to hope for surprises or to think maybe this time would be different. But there's something about Christmas that still makes you want to believe. The lights, the music, the smell of cinnamon in the air, it whispers promises of magic and family and belonging. Deep down, I wanted to feel like I belonged too. Our house looked like something from a magazine spread. My mom had hired caterers and decorators because appearances mattered more to her than anything else. A 20-foot tree stood in the foyer, dripping in gold and burgundy ornaments. Garlands wrapped around every banister, candles flickered in crystal holders, and the massive fireplace roared with fresh wood. Guests who stopped by complimented my mom on how beautiful everything looked. She smiled, soaking in the praise, while I stood off to the side, like a stranger admiring someone else's home. Dinner was just as extravagant. Prime rib, scalloped potatoes, roasted vegetables, fresh rolls, the kind of meal most families would consider a feast of a lifetime. We ate off fine china, sipping from crystal glasses filled with expensive wine. But what I remember most wasn't the food. It was the silence directed at me. The conversation circled around Emily, her sorority parties, her upcoming ski trip, the internship Dad had lined up for her next summer. Every time I tried to add something, the words floated into the air and fell flat. My parents nodded absently, then quickly shifted back to Emily's stories. I sat there with my fork in my hand, watching the way my father's eyes lit up when Emily spoke, the way my mother leaned in to hear every detail. That look of pride, that warmth, they had it in endless supply for her. I couldn't remember the last time they'd looked at me that way. After dinner came the part I dreaded and longed for in equal measure, the gift exchange. Every year it was the same routine, youngest to oldest, which meant Emily went first. My father's voice carried a special excitement that night as he said, "I think we should head outside for this one." My stomach sank before we even stood up. Through the window, I had noticed a car in the driveway earlier, but assumed it belonged to a guest. When we stepped outside into the cold night air and I saw the truth, my chest tightened. The car wasn't just any car, it was a brand new BMW X5, gleaming under the outdoor lights with a massive red bow tied neatly on top. Even from a distance, I could tell it was the luxury model, the kind you see in commercials where families hug each other in the snow as if money falls from the sky. "Surprise!" my parents shouted in unison. Emily squealed, covering her mouth with her hands before bursting into tears of joy. My father dangled the keys in front of her like they were a crown he was passing down. "All yours, princess. Merry Christmas." Emily launched herself into his arms, sobbing about how it was the best gift ever, while my mother wrapped her in a hug, mascara smudging as she cried too. The cameras flashed, neighbors peeked from across the street. My parents beamed as though giving her that car was the proudest moment of their lives. And me? I stood in the cold, invisible again, watching a scene unfold that told me everything I already knew. Emily was their pride. I was their shadow. As we walked back inside, Emily's laughter filled the air. She dangled the keys, talking about all the places she would drive, already posting pictures for her friends to see. My parents followed behind, glowing with happiness. And I trailed after them, a quiet ache growing inside me, knowing my turn was next, but already suspecting what was coming. I told myself not to hope, not to expect anything meaningful, but somewhere deep inside, a small part of me still whispered, maybe this time they'll see me. When we came back inside from the driveway, the house was buzzing with excitement. Emily twirled the BMW keys in her hand like they were jewelry, her laughter echoing through the living room. My parents followed close behind, glowing with pride as if they had just accomplished something extraordinary by giving her that car. I sat down quietly, trying to steady my breathing, trying not to let the sting of humiliation show. My turn was coming, and a tiny piece of me clung to hope. Maybe they had something meaningful for me too. Maybe they wouldn't let me walk away from this night empty-handed. My mother reached under the tree, her manicured fingers brushing through the ribbons and glittering paper until she pulled out a small box. She smiled as she walked toward me, and for a fleeting second my chest tightened with anticipation. The box was wrapped in expensive silver paper topped with a delicate bow. My fingers trembled as I tore the paper away, every nerve in my body begging for this moment to prove I mattered. Inside was a plastic piggy bank. Pink, cheap, shaped like a cartoon pig. And sticking out of the slot on top was a $1 bill, folded neatly. Silence fell in my head, though the room around me burst into laughter. My father chuckled first, shaking his head like he just told the world's funniest joke. "It's symbolic, Jenny. Time to save. You're 25 now. It's about time you learned the value of money." My mother nodded approvingly. "Every little bit counts, sweetheart." I looked at the piggy bank in my hands, my face frozen in a smile so stiff it hurt. Everyone was watching me, my parents, Emily, the relatives who had dropped by. They all laughed as if it was harmless fun, a quirky little lesson wrapped up as a gift. I laughed too, because what else could I do? But inside, I was breaking. Emily snickered from across the room, holding her BMW keys high. "Hey, maybe now you can start saving for your own car. Or, just take the bus." My parents smiled indulgently at her joke, as if mocking me was entertainment worth applauding. That was the moment the truth hit me like a punch in the gut. It wasn't just about the gifts. It was about what those gifts represented. Emily got love, pride, and recognition in the form of a luxury car. I got humiliation disguised as a life lesson. I thought back to every moment in my life when I had been overlooked, the birthdays forgotten, the achievements ignored, the times I begged for help and was told to be responsible. It all came crashing down in that single instant. Holding that piggy bank with $1 inside, I understood something I'd been too afraid to admit for years. I wasn't a daughter to them. I was a joke. The laughter in the room rang in my ears, loud and cruel, until it was all I could hear. I forced myself to sit there, nodding, pretending to be okay. But inside, something shifted. Something snapped. I knew I couldn't stay in this house, in this family, any longer. That night, long after everyone had gone to bed, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. My chest was heavy, my eyes burning with tears I refused to let fall. And as the clock crept past 3 in the morning, I made a choice that would change my life forever. That night, after the laughter died down and the house grew quiet, I lay awake in the guest room with the piggy bank still sitting on the dresser. The silence of the house was heavy, broken only by the faint hum of the heating system. I stared at the ceiling, my chest aching, my eyes burning, replaying the scene over and over, the bow on Emily's BMW, the sound of everyone cheering, the sting of their laughter when my father said, "It's symbolic, Jenny." Time to save sleep wouldn't come. I kept shifting in bed, the sheets tangling around me like ropes, each thought pulling tighter until I could barely breathe. For the first time in my life, I didn't just feel unwanted. I felt disposable, like a prop in their perfect family picture, useful only when they needed me to play a role. By 3 a.m., the decision crystallized in my mind. I couldn't stay here anymore. Not one more night, not one more morning of pretending I was fine. I needed to leave, not just the house, but the life they had boxed me into. My heart pounded as I slipped out of bed and crept down the hallway. Every step felt louder than it should, the wooden floor creaking under my weight. I froze when the family dog stirred in his bed, then let out a small sigh and settled back down. My palms were slick with sweat, my chest tight, but I kept moving. I knew exactly where Emily would have left her purse, on the table by the entryway, like she always did. Sure enough, there it was. Designer leather, slouched open, the BMW key fob shining on top with the decorative keychain my father had proudly added when he gave it to her. I stared at it for a long moment, my pulse racing. If I took it, there would be no going back. I reached out, grabbed the keys, and set down a note I had scribbled earlier on a scrap of paper. Don't look for me. My handwriting trembled across the page, but the words were steady. Stepping outside, the night air slapped me awake. The BMW sat in the driveway, sleek and perfect under the moonlight. For a second, I hesitated. Was I really about to do this? To drive away from everything I had ever known? But then I remembered my father's laughter, Emily's mocking tone, my mother's approving nod as if handing me a piggy bank with $1 was a reasonable gift for a 25-year-old daughter. The humiliation burned hot in my chest, and with it came resolve. I pressed the unlock button. The car's lights blinked, briefly illuminating the driveway. I slid into the driver's seat, the leather cold against my skin, the dashboard glowing with symbols I had never seen in my old Honda. My hands trembled on the steering wheel. For a second, I just sat there, the weight of the choice pressing down on me. Then I turned the key. The engine purred to life, smooth and quiet, like a beast waiting to run. I put the car in reverse, glanced once at the house shrinking behind me, and backed out into the street. Messages I refused to read. The tears finally came, hot and unstoppable, but they weren't just tears of sadness. They were tears of release. That was the night I left everything behind. I didn't know where the road would take me, but I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I would never go back. By the time I checked into a cheap roadside motel hours later, the adrenaline had finally started to fade. I collapsed onto the stiff mattress, still in my clothes, the BMW keys clenched tightly in my hand. For a few hours, I drifted into a restless sleep, but when I woke up around noon, the weight of what I'd done hit me like a truck. My phone, which I had silenced before leaving, was buzzing nonstop. Leaving was buzzing nonstop. When I unlocked the screen, the notifications were endless. 27 missed calls, 45 text messages, and more voicemails than I could scroll through. At first, the messages were filled with confusion. Jenny, where are you? The car is gone. Call us immediately.
words grew sharper, angrier. Bring the car back now. We've crossed the line this time.
Don't make us call the police. And then Emily's messages started flooding in. Long, frantic paragraphs filled with crying emojis and exclamation points. How could you do this to me? That car was mine. You're jealous, aren't you? You've always been jealous. I hope you're happy you ruined Christmas. Her words scrolled endlessly, alternating between fury and desperation. At one point, she even sent a voice message. I pressed play, and her shrill voice filled the room. You stole from me, Jenny. You stole from me. You've always been bitter because Mom and Dad love me more. And now you're proving it to everyone. The sound of her sobbing cracked in the background before she hung up. I set the phone down, my hands shaking. My chest tightened with a mix of anger and heartbreak. Was this really what they thought of me? A thief? A bitter shadow of my sister? Not once did anyone stop to think why I might have done it. Not once did they ask if I was okay. By mid-afternoon, the messages escalated again. My father's voice filled one of the voicemails, hard and controlled like he was already rehearsing for a courtroom. Jenny, listen to me carefully. That car was a gift for your sister. You may have signed paperwork, but you know it doesn't belong to you. If you don't return it immediately, we'll take legal action. Don't test me on this. My mother's voicemail wasn't any softer. Jenny, sweetheart, please stop this nonsense. You're being unreasonable. Think about your future. If you push us, you'll regret it. I laughed bitterly when I heard that. Think about my future? My future had never been their concern before. Why now? Because their favorite daughter's luxury car was at stake. As the hours passed, the messages shifted again. From threats to bargaining. We'll fix the paperwork. Just bring the car back. You don't want to lose your family over this. And finally, the words that cut deepest. You're embarrassing us. Embarrassing them. That was what it came down to, not my feelings, not the years of neglect, not the humiliation of that piggy bank, but the fact that my choice had made them look bad. I stared at the phone, the BMW keys glinting on the bedside table, and felt a strange calm wash over me. They could rage, they could threaten, they could call me names, but for the first time, I wasn't powerless. They had written my name on those papers. They had tied their own rope. Legally, the car was mine. And deep down, they knew it. Their fury only proved one thing. I had finally broken out of the role they'd forced me into. I wasn't invisible anymore. I wasn't the joke. I was the one holding the power. By the second day, the calls and messages hadn't slowed down. If anything, they became more desperate, more venomous. I ignored them all. But that didn't stop my family from finding me. It was early evening when the pounding on my apartment door began. My stomach clenched the moment I heard my father's voice through the wood. Jenny, open this door right now. His tone was sharp, commanding, the same voice that used to silence me at the dinner table. For a second, I froze. A part of me wanted to stay quiet, to pretend I wasn't home. But the banging grew louder, my mother's pleading voice joining in. Sweetheart, please. Let's talk about this. My hands trembled as I turned the knob. When the door swung open, the three of them stood there. My father's face red with fury, my mother pale and tense. Emily behind them, her eyes wild, mascara streaked down her cheeks. She looked like she wanted to lunge at me. Where is it? Emily shrieked, pushing past my mom. Where's my car? I stood my ground, my voice calm, even though my pulse hammered in my ears. It's not your car, Emily. It's mine. The registration is in my name. The insurance is in my name. Legally, it belongs to me. Her mouth fell open before twisting into a snarl. That's just paperwork. Everyone knows it was meant for me. I felt a bitter laugh rise in my throat. Paperwork? You mean the insurance fraud you all committed without my consent? Putting me at legal risk just so you wouldn't have to pay higher premiums for her reckless driving? That's not paperwork, Dad. That's a crime. For once, my father didn't have a ready answer. His jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing. My mother gasped, pressing a hand to her chest. How dare you accuse us of fraud? We were trying to help Emily, to keep family costs down. By putting me in danger? My voice cracked but grew louder. If Emily had crashed that car and hurt someone, I would have been liable. My credit, my future, my life on the line, so she could play princess behind the wheel of a BMW. The room went silent for a moment. My father's face darkened. Enough. You've made your point. Now return the car, and we'll transfer the paperwork properly. I shook my head slowly. No. The word hung heavy between us. My mother's mouth dropped open. Emily looked like she might explode. What do you mean, no? She screeched. I mean, I said firmly, I'm done being used. I'm done being invisible. That car is mine now, and you don't get to take it back just because you decided I was strong enough to survive without your love. My father's voice rose. You are being unreasonable, Jenny. You're throwing away your family over something material. Tears burned in my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. This isn't about the car. It's about every birthday you forgot because Emily had a recital, every award you ignored because Emily posted a new photo. Every time I begged for help and you told me to handle it on my own. This car is just the proof, the symbol of all those years, and I'm not giving it up. For the first time in years, they had no power over me. My words silenced them, if only for a moment. The walls of my small apartment felt like armor, holding me steady against their storm. When my father finally spoke, his voice was cold. If that's how you want it, Jenny, then you're making a grave mistake. You'll regret this, but deep inside, I already knew I wouldn't. The silence after my refusal was suffocating. Emily paced like a caged animal, muttering under her breath about how unfair I was being. My mother wrung her hands, her lips pressed into a thin line. But my father, he stood perfectly still, his jaw clenched, his eyes sharp. I knew that look. It was the same look he wore in boardrooms when he was about to strike a deal. Finally, he spoke. If you don't return the car, Jenny, then understand this. You will lose everything. Your share of the inheritance, any financial support, any place in this family. Gone. His words were delivered like a verdict, cold and absolute. My chest tightened, but I forced myself to breathe evenly. This was his final weapon, the card he always believed would keep me in line. Money, security, the promise of a future tied to his approval. For a moment, I almost faltered. After all, I wasn't rich. I didn't have a safety net. Cutting ties with them meant standing completely on my own. But then I looked at Emily, clutching her phone, probably ready to post about the drama once it blew over. I looked at my mother, choosing silence rather than standing up for me, just like always. And finally, I looked at my father, the man who had spent my entire life treating me like a backup plan, only to dangle money over my head as if that was love. I swallowed hard and said, "You can't take away something I never had." My father's brows furrowed. "What are You talking about why? You talk about inheritance like it's a gift I should be grateful for. But tell me, when have you ever given me anything that mattered? You paid for Emily's car, Emily's college, Emily's trips. I paid for my own. I worked myself to exhaustion while you threw money at her every whim. So don't stand there and act like you're cutting me off from some great fortune. You cut me off years ago. My mother gasped softly as if I had slapped her. Emily scoffed, rolling her eyes. Oh, please. You're so dramatic. You're jealous because Dad trusts me with nice things. I turned to her, my voice sharper than I'd ever dared before. Trust you? They didn't trust you, they used me. They put the car in my name because they knew you'd wreck it and they couldn't get insurance otherwise. That wasn't trust, Emily. That was them gambling with my life so you could keep playing princess. For a second, even Emily went silent. My words hung heavy in the air, undeniable. My father's face flushed crimson. Enough, he barked. You will regret this defiance. You'll come crawling back when you realize how much you need us. I shook my head slowly, tears finally spilling down my cheeks, not from weakness but from release. No, Dad, I don't need you, not your money, not your approval, not your inheritance. If cutting me out is what it takes, then do it. Because I'd rather have nothing than keep pretending I'm part of this family. The words tasted bitter and freeing all at once. For years, I had been afraid of losing them, of losing the security their wealth promised. But standing there, with the BMW keys in my pocket, and their anger raging around me, I realized the truth. They had never been mine to lose. Emily let out a shaky laugh, like she couldn't believe what she was hearing. My mother whispered my name, her voice trembling. But I turned away, wiping my face. We're done, I said quietly. You've made your choice. And I've made mine. The room fell into a heavy silence after my words. For a long moment, no one moved. My father's chest rose and fell sharply, his fists clenched at his sides. My mother's eyes darted between us, like she was desperate to patch the cracks but too afraid to choose a side. Emily broke the silence first, her voice trembling with rage. You're unbelievable, she spat. You've always been bitter, Jenny. You couldn't stand that I was the favorite, so you stole from me to get attention. You're pathetic. Her words stung, but they didn't pierce me the way they once would have. Instead, they clarified the truth. This wasn't just about a car, it wasn't about $1 in a piggy bank. It was about years of being dismissed, mocked, overlooked. Emily wasn't my rival. She was the product of the pedestal my parents had built for her. And in that moment, I saw it clearly. She would never see me as her sister. Only as the shadow she believed I was meant to stay in. I didn't steal from you, Emily, I said firmly. I reclaimed what was mine, what they forced into my name without even asking me. You can call it jealousy, you can call it theft, but deep down you know I'm right. You've been handed everything, and I've been left with scraps. Well, not anymore. Emily's face twisted, tears welling in her eyes, but they weren't the tears of someone hurt. They were the angry, frustrated tears of someone who had lost control. You're dead to me, she snapped, her voice breaking. Don't you ever come back? My mother gasped softly. Emily, don't say that. But she didn't defend me. She didn't contradict the poison in my sister's words. She never did. I looked at her then, really looked, and saw the truth I had avoided all my life. She wasn't going to choose me. She never had. My mother had always found it easier to comfort Emily, to justify my father's decisions, to stay silent when I needed her most. Her loyalty was to peace, not to justice. And, in choosing silence, she had chosen Emily. "Jenny," she whispered, her voice trembling, "please don't do this. We're family. We can fix this." I shook my head slowly, tears sliding down my cheeks, but my voice steady. "No, Mom. Family doesn't break one child to build up another. Family doesn't humiliate you in front of a room full of people and then call it a joke. Family doesn't use your name to commit fraud and then threaten to cut you off when you fight back. You may be blood, but you're not my family." My father slammed his fist against the table, making Emily jump. "Get out," he barked. "If you don't return that car by the end of the week, you are no longer welcome in this house. You will regret this decision for the rest of your life." I met his glare and, for the first time, didn't flinch. "I already regret wasting 25 years waiting for you to see me. That ends now." The air between us crackled with finality. Emily turned her face away, arms crossed, refusing to look at me. My mother bit her lip, tears threatening but never falling, caught between love and loyalty she didn't have the courage to balance. And my father, he just stared at me like I was a stranger. I picked up the BMW keys from the counter and slipped them into my pocket. My hands shook, but my heart felt lighter than it had in years. Without another word, I walked to the door. As I stepped into the cold night, I didn't look back. The door slammed shut behind me, and with it, so did the chapter of my life where I begged to belong. For the first time, I wasn't the forgotten daughter. I was free. The night I walked out of my parents' house for the last time, the cold Boston air stung my cheeks, but inside I felt strangely light. The BMW's engine hummed steadily beneath my hands as I pulled away, leaving behind not just a driveway, but an entire lifetime of humiliation. For the first time in 25 years, no one was telling me I was too independent to deserve help. No one was laughing at my pain. I was alone. And that loneliness felt terrifying. But it also felt like freedom. The first few weeks were the hardest. I rented a small one-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of the city with the money I had saved. The BMW parked outside like a reminder of everything I had lost and everything I had gained. I cooked ramen noodles most nights, stacked bills on the counter, and worked extra hours at my marketing job to keep up. Without the financial cushion my family had always dangled in front of me, every dollar mattered. But, unlike the piggy bank they mocked me with, this time I wasn't saving to please them. I was saving for myself. At night, when the world was quiet, the doubts crept in. What if they were right? What if I had burned bridges I would one day need? What if I really was nothing without their name, their money, their approval? I would curl up in bed, clutching a pillow, fighting back tears as those questions ate at me. The loneliness pressed in heavy, the silence sometimes unbearable. But then morning would come. I'd pour myself coffee in my mismatched mug, open my laptop, and dive into my work. I started to realize something. I was still standing, even without their money, even without their so-called inheritance, even without their love. I was surviving, and that was proof I was stronger than they had ever given me credit for. I set small goals for myself. Pay the rent on time every month. Put a little into savings. Cook a real meal instead of eating out of a package. Celebrate each client win at work, even if no one else was clapping for me. Slowly, those victories built into something bigger. Pride. Not the fleeting pride of showing off a gift from someone else, but the deep, steady pride of building something with my own two hands. Still, the ties to my family weren't completely severed. My phone buzzed constantly, calls I ignored, messages I deleted without opening. Some were threats, some were pleas, some were guilt-laced manipulations. I blocked most of them, but every now and then curiosity got the better of me. Once, I opened a text from my mom that simply read, "We can't believe you're doing this to us. You've embarrassed us in front of everyone." I stared at it for a long time, my chest tight, before deleting it. Not once did she ask if I was okay. Not once did she say she loved me. And that was when it truly sank in. Leaving hadn't cost me a family. It had only stripped away the illusion of one. One evening, about a month after I left, I stood by the window of my tiny apartment, watching the snow fall in quiet sheets. The city lights glowed faintly in the distance, muffled by the storm. I pressed my hand against the glass and whispered to myself, "You're free now, Jenny." The words felt foreign on my tongue, but they filled me with warmth. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the forgotten daughter, the invisible shadow, the punchline of a cruel family joke. I was my own person, alone, yes, but free. And that freedom, I realized, was worth more than any car, any inheritance, or any hollow apology they could ever give me. For a short while, I thought silence would protect me. If I ignored their calls, blocked their numbers, and stayed focused on work, eventually the storm would pass. But I underestimated just how far my parents were willing to go to protect the image they had built for themselves and for Emily. The whispers started small. A cousin messaged me on Facebook. "Hey, what's going on? Your mom said you stole Emily's car. Is that true?" My stomach dropped. I hadn't told anyone outside of that house what had happened, but clearly my parents had, and they weren't telling the truth. Within weeks, the story had spread through our extended family. According to them, I had snapped on Christmas, thrown a tantrum, and driven off with a car that was never meant for me. At first, I was furious, but the fury gave way to something worse: hurt. People I loved, people I grew up celebrating holidays with, were suddenly looking at me like I was a thief. At work, I overheard a colleague whispering after seeing a Facebook post from one of my relatives. "Can you believe she stole from her own sister?" I walked past, pretending I hadn't heard, but inside, shame burned hot in my chest. I wanted to scream the truth, that the BMW had been in my name, that I was the one who had been betrayed, that I had spent my entire life being erased. But instead, I stayed quiet, because explaining the truth felt like screaming into the wind. Emily fueled the fire online. She posted photos of herself in tears, captions like, "Some people will stab you in the back," even family paired with vague hashtags about betrayal. Every like, every comment from her friends calling me toxic chipped away at me. My mom called once more from a different number I hadn't blocked yet. Her voice was calm, measured. "Jenny, sweetheart, people are talking. Do you really want this to be your reputation? Just bring the car back quietly and we can make this all go away." I closed my eyes, gripping the phone tighter. "You mean your reputation, Mom. You don't care what people think of me. You care what they think of you. You're embarrassed because the daughter you ignored finally stood up for herself." There was silence on the line before she sighed heavily. "You've always been so ungrateful." Then she hung up. Ungrateful. The word echoed in my head for days. I had worked 2 jobs to pay my way through college, while Emily had everything handed to her. I had begged for recognition, begged for fairness, and gotten nothing. And now, because I refused to be their scapegoat, I was ungrateful? The worst part wasn't the lies. They were painful, yes, but I knew the truth. The worst part was realizing how easily people believed them. To the world, my parents were the generous professionals with the picture-perfect life. Emily was their golden child. And me, I was just the jealous older sister who couldn't handle being overshadowed. One night, I broke down in my apartment. The weight of it all crushed me. I sat on the kitchen floor, clutching a mug of cold coffee, and sobbed until my body shook. For a moment, I almost believed the story they told about me. Maybe I really was the problem. Maybe I really was the villain. But then I looked at the BMW keys on the counter. Cold metal, heavy with proof. The title in my drawer, with my name in bold letters. And I remembered every moment that had led me here. The piggy bank, the laughter, the years of neglect. Number. I wasn't the villain, I was the evidence. And if they wanted to paint me as a thief, then I would prove, once and for all, that the only crime in this story belonged to them. Selling the BMW felt like closing the door on a chapter that had haunted me all my life. With the money safely in my account and the legal threats proven empty, I finally had space to breathe. For the first time, I wasn't weighed down by fear of what my parents might take away. They had already taken so much, but now I was the one who had chosen to walk away. I poured my energy into rebuilding. My job at the marketing firm became more than just a paycheck. It was a place where my ideas mattered, where my voice was heard. My boss praised my work. Clients requested me by name. And slowly, I carved out a reputation that was mine alone. On weekends, I took cooking classes, joined a local book club, and reconnected with people who valued me for who I was, not for what I could provide. Therapy sessions helped me untangle years of shame and neglect, teaching me to replace "I'm not enough" with "I am worthy." Every morning I woke up in my modest apartment, brewed coffee in my chipped mug, and felt grateful. Not for luxury, not for gifts, but for the quiet dignity of knowing I had built this life with my own hands. That peace was something no one in my family could ever give me, and something they could never take away. Meanwhile, I began to hear whispers of what was happening back home. Emily's perfect facade was crumbling. The BMW I had sold was gone, of course, but so was the easy protection of her golden child status. Without the car, without the image of success my parents had tried to paint for her, she was just another young woman with no savings, no independence, and no resilience. Her social media posts grew darker, filled with cryptic captions and passive-aggressive digs at fake friends. Some relatives quietly told me she had been struggling in school, skipping classes, relying more heavily on my parents' money. My parents weren't faring much better. The story they spread about me had backfired. Some relatives questioned why they had put the car in my name in the first place. A few even suggested they had been careless, even dishonest. My father's voice at work, once commanding, was now tinged with defensiveness, as colleagues whispered about the family scandal. My mother, who had thrived on the image of a flawless household, began avoiding social gatherings. For them, reputation was everything, and they were losing it. The contrast was stark. They had tried to strip me of dignity, yet I had gained independence, respect, and inner peace. They had tried to crown Emily as the shining daughter, yet she was unraveling under the weight of a life built on favoritism and dependency. One evening, as I was finishing dinner, my email pinged. It was from Emily. The subject line was a single word: sorry. The message was short. Jenny, I know you hate me, but I need to say this. I finally see what they did to you, to us. I thought I was lucky, but now I realize they crippled me by never letting me stand on my own. I don't know if you'll ever forgive me, but I'm sorry I stared at the screen for a long time, my chest tight. For years, I had dreamed of an apology, of someone in that family acknowledging what I endured. And here it was, in black and white. I didn't reply. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I felt something shift inside me. Closure, perhaps. Or maybe just confirmation that I hadn't imagined it all. That the truth had finally spoken for itself. I closed my laptop and walked to the window. Snow fell softly outside, blanketing the city in white. For the first time in my life, the silence didn't feel heavy. It felt peaceful. I had left with nothing but a car and a broken heart. Now I had everything that mattered: freedom, dignity, and a future I had chosen for myself. And them? They had the car once, the money, the spotlight. But in the end, all they were left with was emptiness. I walked out of my parents' house at 3 a.m. with nothing but a set of car keys and a heart full of pain. For years, I thought I was the forgotten daughter, the joke in a family that never saw my worth. But leaving showed me something I never expected: that sometimes losing your family is the only way to find yourself. Today, I don't measure my value in gifts, money, or approval. I measure it in freedom, in peace, and in the life I've built with my own two hands. My parents and sister still chase appearances, but me, I finally live in truth. If my story touched you, please like and subscribe. Here on Revenge Stories Uncovered, we share powerful journeys of betrayal, resilience, and ultimate justice. Because at the end of the day, revenge isn't always about destruction. It's about rising stronger and proving to yourself that you were always worth more. Thank you for listening. And remember, sometimes the sweetest revenge is simply living free.